Hello, Alan. Can you hear me?
Good morning. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Great,
My,
great.
I think my camera's
I've seen you before and I've seen your name around this space for quite a while, but I don't know where you work. Where do you work?
Digital Trust Foundry. We're
Okay, I've heard of them.
fairly new. Yeah.
You probably know where I work. I work at Life.
Right. Yeah. Good to meet you again. I know I've seen you around as well. And there's
I'm
Phil.
technically on vacation today, but I didn't want to miss the Did WebS meeting.
Right.
Oh, okay. Jonathan posted on Discord that he wanted it canceled, so I came on here to tell people it was
Oh,
canceled because he said you
oh,
wouldn't be
funny.
here. But
Okay. Yeah, I decided to jump on anyway for a few minutes. I guess if it's canceled, we better leave.
I see.
well, you can stay. I mean, you're one of the people running it, so I will bow out. I just came on here to let people know you wouldn't be here,
Okay.
but you are here. So, hey, Alan, how's it going?
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Good. Hi,
All right,
Phil.
bye.
Okay. I
Yeah,
can
I
see.
was originally planning on not being here,
I see.
but I'm doing a staycation, not a vacation. And so I was 5 minutes away. I'm like, I may as well jump in.
Got it. Got it. Oh well. Um, so I'm assuming Sam knows that it's not on, so everybody knows.
Maybe.
I might hang
Well,
around for.
I can give a little bit of an update on where did WebS is at. Yeah, I'll get that
Yeah,
started. May
please
as
go
well.
ahead.
Let me just post in the Discord real quick to say I'm here.
Right.
I should have told Jonathan yesterday. It was a bit up in the air. Anyway, we've got some stuff going on here. I live in St. George now.
Oh,
And
I see.
so
Okay.
yeah, the energy levels, I got a couple of sick people at home, and so it's unpredictable when I'll for sure be here or not. But it turns out today was a great day. So let me
All right.
post real quick up in the air. Yet I was able to make it. Feel free to join, or
Which channel are you posting to, by the way?
it's the Web of Trust Discord
Yeah. Oh,
channel called did-webs.
oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay. Now I see Phil's message there.
Okay. Well, may as well do a recording. I'll pull up the notes here. Give me just a second. Let's see. Did WebS task force, and I'll share my screen in just a moment.
Okay. Let's see if I'm going to see if I can clean my camera. For some reason it's very blurry.
Thanks again for jumping on to. Okay, let's see. Pulling the meeting notes up. Here we are. Let's see. Did WebS meeting page. We'll go ahead and do one. Let's duplicate this. Yeah, duplicate. No, let's just make it duplicate. And today is the 16th. Change these. 16th and all right. Get my screen share going.
In my office now.
Share advanced portion of screen. Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. This one is. All right. How's this the text size? Is this good?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. I just mentioned the antitrust policy since this is a TOIP meeting. Anybody who is a member is free to participate. Everyone else is just an observer. Okay. Now what we'll do. So action items from last meeting, we can take a quick look. Let me reorder this one down here. Last meeting, we had some action items. I was going to check for any definitions referencing the who is spec. There were none. Let me just copy these over. Let's see. Oh, did I not? Unpublished changes. Update. Okay. Now I'm going to continue editing this. Let's just put these action items in there. Okay. So, and let's pull out we'll do reports in just a minute. Okay. And let's go ahead and pull. Yeah, I'll actually mention some of these things a little bit later. All right. So as far as action items from last time, there was nothing referencing the who is. We actually, oh, good morning, Sam. Good to see you.
Sorry for being late.
Hey, Sam.
I decided to jump on. My
Is
I was originally go ahead.
oh, where's um sorry, forgot his
Jonathan's actually on
yeah, Jonathan.
vacation.
Yeah. Oh, he's on vacation. Okay, sorry.
Technically, I am too, but I'm at a staycation in St. George, and I had time this morning, so I figured I may as well jump on. I didn't know Jonathan was going to be on vacation until I read the Discord message today. Anyway, so okay, so I'm just going through the action items from last time. We gave the antitrust notice, and Phil was on for just a second, and then he jumped off. He was on to direct people and say, Kent's not here. And then when he saw me, he's like, okay, I guess I can leave. All right. So first action item from last time was there were no definitions referencing the who is section. And I actually did remove the who is. There's a PR to remove the who is section. It just needs to be reviewed and approved by Jonathan. And then the who is will be removed from the spec. Good morning, Hank. And we do have the morning. We do have the spec up T version. I'm pretty sure the spec up T version is running. Let's actually show that. Did WebAss specification. Let's pull this. Yeah. Yep.
That's the one.
Here we are. Looks nice. Okay. And if we jump to the repo, is there an easy way from this
Yeah,
panel
you
to
can
get to the
find
repo?
the link. It's yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
That's the way to do it.
All right. So there's one remaining pull request moving out the who is of the spec to the supplement folder. Now, there are some important issues that we'll talk about a little bit later. Let me put that in the action items or the discussion items. So we're going to say important open spec issues. All right, but just mentioning there's only one outstanding pull request just to remove the who is, and what we did is we moved it to a supplements folder called who is. So it's not being thrown away. It's just being moved to a different folder, and it's being completely removed from the rest of the specification because we don't support who is. Just as a refresher, who is was an idea that was suggested as a credential discovery discovery mechanism by Stephen Curran. And if you look at the DidWeb VH spec, he does have a who is section there. We decided we have other discovery mechanisms that are actually better and more secure. And so we don't need I said what more secure there. I should have said just better. I don't know that I haven't really thought about the security properties. So I'm going to say they're better.
The UBI method is secure. Whether it's more secure depends on how you implement the who is in did WebS, because you could make the who is as secure as the UBI, but I don't believe that the way Stephen Kern wanted who was implemented, um, if we reread it, it may not require that you actually verify the same way we do a UBI, right? An UBI is discovery mechanism, and it's not a secure discovery mechanism, but what it discovers can be verified. So you either have a verifiable discovery or you discover that something that's not verifiable and you know you have to rediscover whatever it is. Whereas typically a who is will give you an answer and you don't know if the answer's you don't know, you can't verify the answer. So you have to do some other mechanism besides the who is to verify the answer the who is returns. But technically you could make a who is that is secure by doing the same thing we do with the UBI. So the correct description is we have a known supported mechanism that results in verifiable discovery called the
Right.
UBI. And so the who is at best redundant and at worst insecure.
Thank you for the clarification, Sam. I appreciate that. And that's what we said the other time that we decided to take it out of the spec. So thank you for reviewing that here. Any questions on that from anybody before we move on? And hello, Daniel. And we'll probably be able to hand over the meeting to Daniel a little bit quicker today, since we'll probably finish up soon. Hey,
Okay.
Daniel.
Hey, sorry it took me a second to get off mute. And sorry I've missed so many of these meetings. I have a GSMA meeting that always overlaps with this. So I it's been a long time since I've been here. Sorry.
So do we want to move this to something beside, because we have 3 weeks in the month that we can do this meeting. And so we have the developer call 2 of the weeks, and then this call is the third week, and then the second week of each month is second Tuesday of each month is the Trust over IP carry suite meeting. So we could move this to one of the other meetings. It doesn't really matter if that would not conflict, or is it every Tuesday that you have it, so it doesn't matter?
Well, it has been every Tuesday for the last couple of months. The truth is that what I need to do is just I just need to arrange to be late to the GSMA meeting that I have. And I can do that with a little bit better prior planning, but I just haven't planned ahead enough. I'll do better.
And would it make more sense for you to be the first half of this meeting and the did WebS be the second half? Because we're just doing them both the same time
Yeah,
because we tend to
it,
not
it,
use the full hour in,
the
for
the GSMA meeting is 90 minutes, and so
okay.
if I can do something early here, then I can still hit most of the rest of the other meeting.
Uh, So, so what do you think, Kent? You and Jonathan, would the weeks that Daniel has something, would it be okay to put the dossier work as the first 30 minutes and then you guys the last 30 minutes?
Yeah,
That
for
means you have
sure.
to show up, Daniel.
Yeah, I know, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's plan on that. I'll put that as an item here, discussion item. So Daniel Hardman to do spec first. Did WebS second. WebS. Okay. All right. Let me just put these down below. I'm glad to have you here, Daniel. All right. So we'll just jump into some of those action items. Now that you're here, I'll just mention again, we took out the who is section of the spec. And the reason why is it's redundant and it's at best insecure the way it's currently, or no greater secure. It's likely insecure the way that it's currently planned. There is a secure way to do it. We don't think that's necessary right now since we have an existing discovery mechanism. So we pulled who is out, and it's been moved to the supplements folder. So out of the spec folder into the supplements folder, we can come back to it if we ever feel like we need to. And that's the only open PR to the spec. There were a couple of closed PRs. Let's see. So delegation has been fixed. I think, okay, there's the way that delegation works right now is that there's a service block And all we have, so the ID, what's in the ID for a delegation, this is actually the SED of the delegation seal. Then you have a service endpoint that's your UBI to reach your delegator. And then there's a type entry that says delegator UBI. And there's actually a test right now that's part of the PR. There's a doer level integration test that actually sets up a delegated identifier, delegate and a delegator, and properly pulls the kel. So if you want a code example, there's a code example. I guess there's a no, this is the spec. This is not the implementation. It's a different implementation. Yeah, this is just the spec. Anyway, so that's actually part of my report. But so we pulled the WHOA section out. We're just reviewing action items from last meeting. Pulled that out. Okay, I still need to do this with you, Hank. We need to review all the definitions of the document to see what we can reference from the Carry Suite glossary. So I'm actually going to move that onto action items for next time. Let's see. Can't finish delegation implementation and default, also known as, yes, I did both of those. So we needed to fix the delegation implementation. Well, not fixed, didn't exist. Wasn't too difficult though. It was really straightforward. And the also known as, so I hadn't completed the also known as according to the spec. The spec says you need to have two default DIDs in your also known as, the did carry and the did web. We were already generating both, so it was a simple matter to just add the defaults. Because what we were doing in the past is we were only filling the also known as section with the DIDs that were placed into a designated alias ACDC. Now, whether or not you've issued a designated alias ACDC, there will be two default entries in the also known as section. And I think it's section 7.2 or 7.3 of the spec that required that. So that one's done. The use the gray highlighting to indicate informative versus normative. This, we're going to move forward. Did not get to that.
Okay, so there was a reason why the did web was only populated if you had the designated alias ACDC, and there's a security reason for it.
Okay.
The reason is that anybody can spoof the did web. So somebody could, an implementation of a did resolver, which is insecure, could spoof the did web and therefore mislead somebody in believing that that did web was um, a valid did web. So the ACDC meant that you would not know would be able to just spoof your did web. So that's why it was not put in there without the ACDC.
Okay. Maybe we need to change the spec then.
Yeah, you should change the spec.
I'm pretty sure it's this system right here. Let's see. Okay. You know what I'll do? I'll find it. And then so what I'll do is I'll put that as an action item for the next meeting. I might not be able to find it right now. It's pretty close to here. I just need to read. I don't want to make you guys watch me read through the spec. So I appreciate you pointing that out, Sam. That's really important for us to consider because it's not going to be that hard if we're not supposed to, if it's insecure to have
Yeah,
any dids.
you're not supposed to use did web s to provide a did web unless the person who actually controls the carry AID, you know, verifiably asserts that did web is the appropriate did web. Because otherwise, any implementation uh, can spoof a did resolver, and therefore they can spoof a did web for any did web s.
That makes sense.
Right, because the did web is any domain name that they choose.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the did web s is only the carry AID, and that can't be spoofed because you have to know the private keys. There was actually quite a few discussions about that back in the day because um, uh, that that was a backdoor to get insecure did web dids from secure did web s is just to let the did resolver populate it however it chose to.
Okay, let me capture some of that why here. So you said that, so on the spoofing, are you saying that if I don't put the did web did
In
in an
there,
AC designated as alias as
yeah, yeah,
ACDC?
then somebody who so without that, no one can trust the did web. Now, they still can't trust the did web any more than the security of their zone, their zone files. But at least you know that that particular domain name was intended to be the domain, the did web domain for that did web s. That is a different level of security than to say I can just make up any web that I control and I'll put it in the did doc and then advertise to the world that's the did web for this AID. And so now anybody that has any domain name could assert that domain is the appropriate did web for that AID.
That's true, right? Anybody, if you like
No,
the did resolver
they
could
don't
have been
have to hack a
compromised.
DNS file. They don't have to hijack a DNS file. They can just make the assertion.
Yeah.
At
Okay.
least with the
Okay.
ACDC, they have to hack your DNS file to get to your did web.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So there needs to be
Did
should
resolvers aren't secure. If you're not running your own
right.
local did resolver that you control, you can't trust anything the did resolver says.
Hmm.
Uh,
Spec should be changed
but
to
that also
only.
means that if somebody does an, you know, a so you could always say, well, I will never trust a did resolver that's not my own did resolver, right? But when you're trying to resolve somebody else's did, how do you trust how do you trust your own did resolver? Because you're just, you how are you getting that did web s? Where does it come from? Where's the did web? Where's the web come from? Who supplies that? And the source of truth in this case is the ACDC. The ACDC is making an assertion that says this is the domain name for my AID.
Okay. That makes sense to me. So what I'll do is I'm going to have an action item for me. This is not going to be hard to remove. So the old implementation before I made the latest update already supported adding did web through designated aliases ACDC. So I'm just going to go remove the default did web from also known as.
Yeah, and just make sure, yeah, all you have to do is make sure the spec is clear that if you don't have the reason you can't supply a did web if it doesn't have the ACDC. So the resolver is correct to not give you a did web and they also known as in the case that it doesn't have that ACDC. Now, somebody could still create a resolver that cheated and didn't have the ACDC and put the did web in there. But at least somebody that's consuming that did doc can ask for that ACDC as part of, I believe, part of the did resolver parameters.
That's right. With the carry.caesar stream, they should be able to fully resolve that
Yeah, that's
or
right.
verify it.
Yeah, so you might put an informative note that says that's what happens when if you don't, if you get, if the did doc includes a did web, you can't trust it unless the ACDC is in the Caesar stream. So, um, so a honest did resolver won't put it in the did doc unless it's in the Caesar stream, and a dishonest one may, and so anybody consuming that did doc has to do the verification.
Great. I've got that informative note here as well.
Okay, great.
I'm really glad we did this before the next deep dive. Okay. All right. So I'll continue on with the action items, and then we're going to be in 5 minutes. We're going to give the meeting over to you, Daniel.
Okay.
Okay. So action items. Okay, I did that. Okay, also known as, okay, move excessively informative language from the body of the spec to the annex. That still needs to be done. All right. All right. So discussion items. So we finished the action items from last time. Announcements. Okay, in case anybody didn't know, the did WebS resolver as of right now, well, it wasn't until Sam said we need to change the spec, it was fully spec compliant. So now there's just one last change we need to make to the spec and to the implementation to remove the default did web. But the delegation is in there. And I guess, Sam, I should ask, can we have the did carry did be in there as a default?
Well, if yes, for the same reason, as long as you have the you can provide the cal, then yes, you can have that in there.
Okay, and what I'm saying, let me ask a better question. Is it secure enough to have a default did carry did that has the same AID as the did
Yes,
WebS did,
yes, because
even without the designated alias as ACDC?
that's right.
Okay, great. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because it has the AID. You can't spoof the AID.
Right,
I mean, you can always throw the AID into DidDoc, but it doesn't. It, there's nothing to trust, right? Because if
right,
somebody
right,
signs something and purports that that signature came from that AID, anybody that's doing compliant did carry is going to go, well, okay, yeah, is that the key state?
right.
By looking at the cal, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that with did web, you have an indirection. You have it,
Hmm.
right? So,
Great. I just wanted to confirm that before I
yeah.
go do it. All right. So with that, there's one. We've already done the first deep dive session. The biggest question from the diff recommended did methods committee was actually on the who is section. And so by removing the who is section, so they asked a question of whether or not we were going to support the W3C verifiable credentials data model transformation of ACDCs for
Yeah.
something in the who is section. And we said,
So
no,
that's
we're
good.
not. And we pulled
Yeah,
it out of the
so
spec.
yeah, right. So that's why we get rid of the who is section because
Yeah,
that just opened a can of worms.
exactly. Right. So I was really happy to get that out of the spec. And so the timeline now is that after the next deep dive, which we're going to schedule for January, as pretty much as soon as possible after the holidays, then there begins a 60-day waiting period, after which, if nothing else comes up, to my knowledge of the diff recommended did methods process, did WebS will then become a diff recommended did method. So by about March or April, hopefully by CarryCon. That's the goal, is to have it done by CarryCon. Conf. I got to put the F in there. CarryConf. Okay, that's all the announcements that I have. Anybody else on anything did WebS? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right.
You
So
can call
just
it CarryCon. You just have to remember that the F is in the URL because somebody else already had CarryCon.
okay. Oh man, that's a squatter if I ever heard of one. Okay,
There's lots of people named Carrie, so who knows?
it's true. Okay, action items. We mentioned that. We talked about this. Okay, Daniel Hardman's gonna, well, not action items, discussion items. I pretty much just mentioned all the discussion items. We'll just sort of look through here, see if there's anything else that we need to talk about. Probably not. But actually, I am really strict about timing. So we are done with this section of the meeting unless does anybody else have anything to say about did WebS before we hand the time over to Daniel for the dossier part of the meeting? Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and I hand it over to you, Daniel. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just gonna share this is a list of things that I wanted to talk about related to dossier work. I know that I've been quiet and people have probably been thinking I'm not doing anything. to some extent, I have been distracted, but I have actually been exploring the dossier space a bit in various ways. I had a really productive conversation with Sam about this, and he may have already mentioned some of it, but we discovered, Sam did, that actually we can connect the dossier spec to, um, I'm calling
Well,
it in my head endorsement,
yeah, we
um,
called it joint issuance, but
joint
endorsement.
issuance. Yeah. So there's an interesting link there. That's what that's, I'm gonna just put, uh, I'm going out of order here, but Uh, there's anyway, that's what item two references. But what I'm trying to do here, let me step back from the specific points for a second and just say, I'm trying to give you a tour of the headspace a little bit because I want to spark some ideas. I plan to use some of the precious non-meeting time that I have over the holidays to actually do some writing. So the spec's gonna suddenly get bigger. The placeholder that's there will suddenly have a bunch of more interesting meat in it. And what I plan to write about is kind of some of the stuff on this longer list. Oh, so now with that context, let me go back. Um, Dossiers are interesting because we need to both describe you might call it a process of evidence assembly in many use cases, and we have to actually provide the evidence. And at first, when I started thinking through this, I didn't have, it was kind of muddled in my mind, but I've come to the conclusion that the cleanest way to do this is to reserve the attributes block of a dossier entirely for metadata. This is things like, when did you assemble this? What type of dossier are we talking about? Who is the assembler? And are there other roles of other people that have contributed? What governance was used when this thing was assembled? A lot of that stuff is implied by the schema, so I'm not trying to replace the schema stuff. But if there's things that the schema doesn't directly tell you, then the attributes section of a dossier should tell you that stuff. But when it comes to the actual evidence in the dossier, put, you know, air quotes around the word in, um, we should use edges for that. So the metadata then lives in attributes and tells you some extra things about edges besides just what the raw operators and edge names might tell you. Um,
Shouldn't we put I don't see new operators anywhere on this list.
yeah, yeah, we need to talk about new operators. Here, I'll just put yeah, and let me give you an example of what I've been doing is I've come up with a list of use cases for dossiers, and I've been basically running my mental catalog through these use cases, thinking what do I need for this kind of dossier? And the one that I started with, of course, was the verifiable voice protocol dossier. This is something that could have somewhere between 3 and 10 pieces of evidence in it. But they're all relatively well known, and there's a single instance of each piece of evidence. So you need a piece of evidence that says this company has the right to use this phone number. You need another piece of evidence that says this company has the right to use the following brand attributes, like a logo, a brand name. Think of Coca-Cola being allowed to use the brand name of Fanta or Sprite. You need another piece of evidence that says that you've delegated authority for a call center to use Coca-Cola's dossier on its behalf. You need to delegate signing authority to somebody like a service provider. You might need a piece of evidence to prove that your caller is a human versus an AI, or that it's an AI that
is properly configured to represent you. Anyway, all of these pieces of evidence are relatively straightforward, and each one is a single credential, and it's not hard. But then another use case that I've gone through is an NTSB crash scene investigation. So imagine that an airplane crashes. And what you want to do with your dossier is you want to document the findings of the crash scene investigation. So what kinds of evidence are we talking about here? Well, we're potentially talking about hundreds or thousands of pieces of evidence, number one. Number two, there's a lot of physical kinds of evidence in addition to digital kinds. And number three, the set of people that assemble this package of evidence is quite large. And the physical or the interactions between these people are complicated. And you have the full need for carry weighted edges because you have pieces of evidence that have um, uh, degrees of confidence associated with them, things like that. So this is an example of a use case that it gets much, much richer. And this brings us back to point two here about joint issuance. What you would like to do in many cases is capture a piece of evidence um, and sign, but you're not in a classic multi-sig arrangement with other people as you sign. You're rather in this joint issuance scenario where, yeah, you saw this evidence and you signed off on it. Might be a better way to say it. You said, yeah, I think this is legit or this is important or I analyzed it or something. But, until my boss also sees it, or until we get a scientist to ratify what I gathered or something like that, the evidence should not be considered very significant. But you still want to capture it and you want to let signatures accumulate. So this is the endorsement model or the joint issuance model. And you may
Yeah.
actually,
Could I just add to that? Sorry,
yeah,
Daniel.
yeah,
The multi-sig requires tight coordination amongst a multi-sig group. Whereas in the joint issuance or endorsement model, you have situations that clearly can't fit in a tight coordination model. So, like some external reviewer who's not part of your organization, you never talk to them on a regular basis. You bring them in to review something. You would not be in a multi-sig group with that person, but you would still want them to sign something, and you'd want to do that. So that's how the phrase I use is it's loose coordination multi-sig.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So this is why this is it's a great excuse to implement something that I've wanted for a long time in Carry, which is this secondary kind of issuance model where it's multi-signature, but it's not multi-sig. um, it's loosely coordinated signatures, and that also may introduce the idea of phases or degrees of endorsement or commitment to data, where you say, if we hit this threshold, then the data is legitimate. If we don't, it's not. That's the simple version. But you might say, well, we got to a medium high level of confidence on this data or something. I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. I'd love people's input on that. But that's item two. Um, Item three is that you may have edges that are all siblings of one another. If you think about taking photos of a crash scene, um, our
Can I
simple
suggest a
model.
word? Sorry, Daniel.
Go ahead.
Preponderance. Let's
Say
use
that
the
again.
term preponderance of evidence.
Oh yeah, preponderance of evidence. Yeah, that's a good term for that. Yeah. Yeah. So on item three, if you're going to have a dossier that captures all of your photos of the cockpit, you know, you might have an edge that you want to. The instinctive thing that I would do is say, well, okay, I have an edge called photo of cockpit, but then another edge called photo two of cockpit and photo three of cockpit or whatever. You kind of need to model the fact that all of these photos of the cockpit are siblings of one another in a sense within your evidence. And this gets to another thing. Is item 7. I'm realizing it's a little out of order, but you might have pieces of evidence that depend on one another in interesting ways. So an example here is you have audio. Let's say somebody captures audio, and then you have a transcript of the audio. Well, the transcript of the audio is derivative, but it doesn't mean that it's useless to stick it in the dossier necessarily. It just means that you need to know that, you know, the assurance on one goes with or depends on the assurance of the other. So that's another interesting relationship to think about. Um, for partial revocation, this gets back to Sam's phrase about preponderance of evidence. In a classic use of AC/DC with pure credentials, we would say that if any credential is revoked, the whole thing is treated as an invalid chain. But in a dossier, we might say, you know what, there's 7 different clues that support our theory about the crash, the cause of the crash. And we assemble this, and then after the assembly of the dossier, we end up revoking one of those 7 pieces of evidence, but the other 6 remain valid. So somehow we need the ability to say, and this again, preponderance of evidence is a really good idea. We have concluded that here are a bunch of clues, and even if one of these clues gets disproved, it doesn't necessarily disprove the larger point that the dossier is trying to make. And I'm imagining this is the kind of thing that you put in the metadata. You say something about how, you know, these are all indicative rather than definitive pieces of evidence. So don't treat revocation of one as a reason to discard the whole thing.
And if I could interject, the world of what is called multi-attribute, multi-constraint, multi-objective decision making for operational research is all about this. You could use Dempster-Shafer reasoning or uh, uh, Bayesian reasoning, or there's various other ones, fuzzy logic. There's a whole bunch of these that are designed so that you can take uncertainty and make decisions in an environment of uncertainty. And uncertainty is the general term, which means not simply uh, uh, probability, which is most people think of, but it also includes imprecision, staleness, all of the sorts of things that um, lend to some form of not being trusting the evidence, which is one of the reasons why you need to have labeled property graphs with weighted edges so that you can actually reason in a real world as opposed to the ideal world of semantic graphs, which all the edges have a truth value of 1, which is an unreasonable abstraction.
Yeah.
Got a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So, Sam, you just used the phrase labeled property graph. I was reading about graph databases last night, and I wondered, is a chain of AC/DCs a property graph, or is it a labeled property graph?
Well, people call property graphs short for labeled property graphs. So it is technically a labeled property graph. But lots of people shorten labeled property graph and just call it a property graph. They're the same thing.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So, I, some of the other use cases that I've been thinking through, besides the extreme one of the NTSB investigation of a crash and my simple one of VVP, um, applying for a mortgage and assembling evidence to a lender that you're worthy of receiving a loan. Um, there is an investigative journalism one that I've been thinking through. There's scientific research. If you can imagine, we could solve some of the problems in academia around non-reproducibility of scientific research results by saying, "Hey, just submit an ACDC with your research," and a lot of cool stuff would be proved that way or disproved. Um, One of the things that the crash thing and some other ones, the law enforcement one, like investigating a crime scene gets to is a chain of custody, and I've realized we need a schema to cover general chain of custody. This is not a dossier thing. It's just something that I can see 5 different types of dossiers are all going to want this specific thing. Um, if you're dealing with physical stuff, and you need to track how the physical stuff came to be in some kind of trusted state, you need to track chain of custody on the physical thing. I'm a crime scene investigator. I collected this DNA sample on such and such a date, and then another piece of evidence in the dossier is about genetic analysis, but you have to prove that between the collection of the data and the genetic analysis, there was an unbroken chain of custody. Otherwise, the genetic analysis is invalid. And
Well,
so,
that also
I'm
applies to supply chains in general,
yeah, yeah.
and
So
and and also data supply chains, where a data supply chain is the digital twin of a physical supply chain.
yeah, yeah. So I've become interested as a kind of a side topic in developing a high quality chain of custody schema. And what Sam said at the end about digital twins and physical stuff is part of why I want to have a separate formal conversation about this, because I think it's possible to model the problem of chain of custody in a generic way that could apply to vast majority of chain of custody questions, rather than having a specific schema for chain of custody problem one and a different one for chain of custody problem two. So anyway, if anybody's interested in working on a chain of custody schema, I'd love to hear about that. I already talked about dependencies among pieces of evidence. Um, the last one, oh well, actually, so we've got 8 and 9 still to talk about. I'll say that a couple of the use cases that I have imagined introduce the question of privacy, like the mortgage dossier. People's financial data needs to have privacy constraints. The party that assembles the dossier, um, uh, you know, we assume that the assembler is maybe also the party that makes decisions about disclosure of the dossier. But I just wanted to note that we need to maybe have a statement in the dossier spec about selective disclosures, interesting wrinkles when um, the party that provides the evidence or the party that is described by the evidence in the dossier has privacy constraints that need to be managed. So if you're doing investigative journalism, for example, and you have a confidential source, maybe in the metadata point one about the dossier, you have to identify the roles of your confidential sources and say, there's a whole different set of evidence I could produce, but I'm not going to stick it directly in the dossier that qualifies my confidential source. But here in the dossier, I'm just going to provide the output from what I captured in my interview with them or something like that. I don't know. It's not that we need new selective disclosure mechanisms at all. It's just that there's some new nuances to think about because the party that manages the dossier might be different from the party that needs the privacy, and because this joint issuance model entails some thinking about how the parties that are signing off on stuff interact with privacy considerations. And
And,
then,
and if I could amplify that, in the ACDC spec, we talk a lot about selective disclosure, partial disclosure, graduated disclosure of a single ACDC of attributes within that ACDC that are nested down within the attribute or the aggregate section. But because a graph of ACDCs is itself selectively disclosable in the sense of partial disclosure, where you have sets of ACDCs that can be pointed to at edges without disclosing the bodies of those ACDCs and so on. So that is a different graduated disclosure mechanism that we don't talk about. And so it's
and
useful.
yet, Sam, you know, to compliment you, that it's great. We already have all the right building blocks. We just need to say something about how to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, then this all brings us to number 9 because um, it's conceivable that we'll need one or two new edge operators as part of what we're trying to describe here, the mechanisms that we want to use to say how evidence is related, to say how we're going to model preponderance of evidence and so forth. We have weighted average as an edge, but maybe there's something in addition to weighted average that we want to use as an operator or something. I don't know, but I'm starting to feel like maybe there's one or two new operators we should introduce.
Yeah, I think there needs to be one for the endorsement if you're going to have endorsement thresholds.
Yeah.
We need an endorsement threshold operator that may look a lot like a multi-sig threshold, but it's for loose coordination. So it's a different it's applied differently, but it may even be the same syntax, but it's applied at the ACDC level, not at the Kel event level.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a quick tour over um, uh, the topics that I've kind of uncovered as I've been throwing different use cases at the dossier um, model. Um, it's ironic that I started this journey with what turns out to be one of the easiest forms of dossier. um, but it's still cool. I've always thought that the I mean, the very first time I heard Sam say the basic idea of ACDCs is that you can have a whole graph of data, not just a single flat data structure, and it can all be verifiable. Right away, my head went to, oh, there's so many things that I could do with that. And so it's always been kind of a potential area to explore. Then I needed it for the verifiable voice stuff. But as I started doing verifiable voice, I became really interested in how rich this could get. And so it's exciting to go into it, but I'm swimming in very deep water. I'm not, um, if I were listening on this call to Daniel spout off about this topic, I would say, okay, but you're not really doing a very good job of managing collaboration and getting work done. And that's true. Um, I kind of feel like I owe it to the community to like bring something a little bit more organized than just a brain dump. So, like I said, over the holidays, I plan to write some new sections about some of these topics. Um, but if somebody would prefer to grab a section and take ownership of one of these topics and write it themselves, I'd be happy to divvy up that work. Or once I've written some kind of placeholder sections, that's another way to engage is to say, oh, I really am interested in this chain of custody topic, or I'm interested in how we express dependencies among pieces of evidence, or I'm interested in the privacy implications or joint issuance. If you want to take one of these topics and dig into it after I've written something, fine. Or if you want to dig into it and write your own section so that I don't go off the rails first, that's also fine. Let me know.
I think if you do what you're planning to do, because I don't think anybody's going to be doing much anyway. If you write something up that has placeholders for everything and put your ideas in, I think that would be the right way to the best,
Okay.
I guess, the best way to engender engagement, because then people can take a little piece and contribute to it as opposed to trying to start something from scratch.
Okay. One other way that I'd love for people to engage is to propose use cases. So if my description of the law enforcement and the crash scene investigation and the mortgage dossier and whatever are triggering any thoughts in your brain about other kinds of dossiers, I'd love to see if basically I'm looking for kind of a conceptual completeness test where every kind of dossier that we come up with um, fits into the mental model of the features that we're planning to describe, or it doesn't. If somebody says, no, I want to talk about artistic portfolios and how those could be dossiers, and I want to prove that, I'm the artist who created X and the whole subtopic that you've never considered here, or, I want to talk about dossiers as it relates to Web3 and digital twins and uh, I don't know, non-fungible tokens. Um, I, if you have a thought on an angle, I would really love to hear it.
Yeah, I do. I'm actually most interested in the operator section. At some point, I probably become involved in more of the rest of this, but political reputation is something that is the use case. So let's say somebody moves from one precinct to another. They participate in the caucus system. Well, kind of like I moved from Salt Lake County to St. George. I want to take my activity history with me so that I can be rapidly trusted instead of having to build up a reputation from scratch. I lived in Salt
Ooh.
Lake County for 29 years. Let's see, was it 29? And then I went back for a year. So it's effectively 30 years of my life there. I've got a lot of political reputation. And here's the thing, I'm actually talking to the chair of the Utah County Republican Party. I'm going to be open sourcing something that I gave to the Salt Lake County Republican Party for their stuff. But essentially, I'm changing the data stream that I just created with my software. I'm going to make it be a dossier. And what it's going to be, it's going to be citizen focused, but then I want a party level. But essentially, I want somebody to be able to rapidly reintegrate into a new part of the caucus system when they move around the state.
Oh, that's interesting. So,
Yeah, it'd just be a different angle to look at it from. It's not going to make any money right away. It's going to be totally open source and free software. But yeah, go ahead.
well, we need commercial traction, but we shouldn't build software that's only got commercial uses. There's lots of humanitarian and just plain old logistical uses too. Hi, Alan. I see
Right.
you waving. Are you?
You're muted.
So, yeah, I have to leave. I'm sorry. Got another meeting coming up, but
No.
interesting
Okay.
stuff. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Well, I
You'll-
should also be sensitive like Kent was to the time and not run over, but
Yeah, yeah. A dossier could be viewed as reputation for evidence.
Yeah. That's a good embodiment of evidence reputation.
Right. Okay, well, you'll know where I'm coming from in the future when I talk about it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel.
And I
See y'all
posted in the
next year.
chat. Kent, you might want to post into the minutes. There's
Uh-huh.
the set of articles that Daniel and Randy Warshaw wrote about evidence.
Okay.
So that might be good, useful reading for people if you post that in the chat. I put
I
it
will
in the
do
chat,
that.
posted in minutes.
Got it.
The evidence advantage.
Okay,
Sam,
thanks everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, could we have our half
Yes,
an hour
right after.
right
Yes.
away?
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
See y'all later.
Yeah.